Hmm. Hey, what's up, Kalen here? So, not sure if this is working. It seems like the stream is dropping a lot of frames. Oh no, I think it just did in the beginning. I think we're okay now. Well, hey there. Welcome to live stream number 26. Um, I am just checking out the live stream. Okay, I think everything is kosher. Happy Saturday out there to you at home, viewers at home. I have to refresh my restream chat so that you can participate. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, your platform of choice. All right, jumping into the topics for today. First up, life hack. This is my latest life hack I discovered yesterday. Throwing my phone on the ground, specifically in the car. I'm not talking about now. The picture I threw up is just one of the greatest memes of all time. Slightly related to what I'm talking about, which is throwing your throwing the phone on the ground. But so this is I was I sometimes when I'm in the car, hate to admit it, might get distracted, might look at my phone in scenarios where I shouldn't, maybe at a stoplight, things like that. And I'm going, this is a bad habit. I gotta stop this. But it's like, man, if that phone is within reach of my hand, just that phone twitch reflex that so many of us have kicks in, and before I know it, I grab the phone. So my latest thing I do is, maybe I have my headphones in, maybe I'm listening to a podcast. I'm probably listening to a podcast. And what I do is I take my phone, I literally throw it to the passenger side, the passenger side on the ground of the car, so that I can't touch it, right, while I'm driving. And it's so funny because emotionally, when I do that, I have this reaction of like, oh my gosh, what if I need my phone? What if I need to call somebody and of course the nice thing about the headphones is if somebody calls you, you can tap to answer, things like that. And even with a call, you really don't need to take the call. Like if something is that important, you can stop somewhere and do what you need to do. And if it's not that important, then wait, the 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes till you're done driving and deal with it then. And I think so much of the time we allow ourselves to be distracted by things that really don't matter. So that's my new thing. When I get in the car, I'm throwing my phone on the ground, passenger side of the car, so that I'm not distracted by it. So you are free to adopt that life hack as well. All right, next up, this is a tweet from Fernando Ulrich, which I saw yesterday on Bitcoin. I've done some stuff. I've talked about Bitcoin. I'm kind of a fan of it. I think I have 0.003 Bitcoin somewhere. Haven't invested. I like to make predictions and thought lead on the topic of Bitcoin, but I don't have the risk tolerance to actually invest in it. Anyways, so this is a really interesting sort of summary of sort of what Bitcoin has done today. 600,000 blocks of transactions, 465 million total transactions, 18 million total Bitcoins mined, 99.98% uptime, running 24/7, 365 over 10 years in pure anarchy. In other words, decentralized, no central sort of government, sort of ownership direction of it, which is just mind-boggling, And obviously, Bitcoin has its challenges. It's sort of it's slowed down. A lot of people make the argument that it's more of a store of value than what's the word for it? Than like a good currency for transactions because of how slow it's become and whatnot. No, obviously there's a lot of other alternatives in terms of cryptocurrency, but Bitcoin being sort of the father, the mother of all cryptocurrencies. So it's just, looking at these numbers is just incredibly impressive. Some people say crypto is going to change the world, as we know it, as significantly as the internet has changed the world as we know it. Other people say, nah, it's not going to last. And those arguments are going to continue. No one's going to really know until it happens, you know. So we shall see. But it really is pretty wild to see those numbers all in one place. Okay, next up, I want to talk about podcasting, and I am going to pull up Anchor.fm in order to do that. Specifically, what I wanted to say is that, you know, I've talked about the idea of a recession in the past. A lot of people have said we're probably overdue for a recession. And I was listening to something yesterday. This is something Gary Vee talks about a lot in different contexts, but I think that when the recession hits, ad spend is going to shift. Ad spend's already shifting to podcasts. I was listening to, I think, Startup Podcast yesterday by Gimlet, and I noticed an ad from gosh, what was it? It's this, I can't remember. It's this big like chemical engineering company, like this gigantic, not like a Silicon Valley startup that you'd typically hear, not a MeUndies that you'd typically hear on a podcast. It was like a, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a large established business. It was essentially doing sort of corporate PR and talking about some of the positive initiatives they have around climate, on their ad. And I was thinking to myself, like, it's wild that, these more traditional dollars are starting to funnel into podcast spend. And when the recession hits, that trend is going to accelerate like crazy because, Gary Vee talks about this all the time. TV ads are overpriced. When a recession hits, that money is going to go into social media, part of social media being podcasts. And like, if we think that podcasts are hot right now, like in terms of ad spend, podcasts are going, when the recession hits, they're going to go through the roof. And so, hey, start a podcast, right? Start a podcast now. Try to get yourself ready for it. Get yourself ahead of the curve. And Anchor's probably a good way to do that. By the way, this is not a sponsored Anchor thing. I won't ever do anything sponsored on these. I was listening to a buddy's podcast, and they did actually have an Anchor ad spot in there, which is what made me think to say that. Okay, next up, no code is democratizing app creation the way that YouTube has democratized content. This is interesting. So Joe Brown, who's somebody I recently connected with on Twitter, does some interesting no code stuff. And I saw this tweet yesterday, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit. So Joe has done a bunch of different apps using no code, using Bubble, using different platforms, mostly Bubble, I think. He has a platform called New Code, which is sort of a community curation of different no code builds and whatnot. Anyways, so the tweet is, I 100% forgot about this old hotel chat app I built in Bubble Group. Design still holds up. And then there's a couple screenshots. And what was wild to me about this is, like, in thinking about, coding versus no code, like, there's no such thing as forgetting about something you coded. Like, so much blood, sweat, and tears goes into coding that it does not exist that you forgot about something you coded, right? Whereas, the whole thing with no code is that the amount of friction is reduced to the point where you can build, and I think Joe and others that are doing this, I mean, you can build an app in a day, in 7 days. You can build a non-trivial app in a short amount of time, which is why it's possible to build something and completely forget about it. Which on the one hand is it's crazy, but it's also sort of a good thing in the sense anything that reduces friction and creating value is a good thing. But I that just sort of blew my mind, and it made me think that I think as developers we get a little uncomfortable with the idea of no code. Is this going to take away our jobs, kind of a thing? Sort of a vision that I had when I was seeing this and thinking about this is that No code is helping to democratize app development in the same way that YouTube has democratized content. Does that mean that it's easy to be successful on YouTube? The answer is no, right? My channel is a case in point. It's taking forever to get any views whatsoever. but the point is that just because content creation is democratized on YouTube, what that means is on any given topic, in the past, pre-YouTube, on any given topic, on the topic of how to garden, right? There was a handful of TV shows that were approved by the gatekeepers on TV networks and generally had a certain level of quality. Post YouTube, on the topic of how to garden, there are a million videos, most of which are low quality, right? And the ones that stick out on YouTube are the ones that are really high quality. So over time, there develops a barrier to entry. And if you want to, you can put a video on YouTube easily in the same way you can build a no-code app easily, right? And in any given category, in the category of, for example, a hotel chat app, right? Instead of there being 3 to 5 to 10 options, there's going to be thousands of options in every category, most of which will be low quality, most of which will be something somebody did real quick. They didn't put a lot of design polish into it. They didn't put a lot of marketing spend into it. All the same analogies to YouTube, right? The YouTube videos that stand out are the ones where they put a lot of money into production quality. They put a lot of effort into distribution, into networking, and all those kinds of things. Those are the ones that stand out. So the same dynamics will take place with no code. So there will be a barrier to entry. But overall, it'll be good for that to be democratized further. Quick sip of coffee. Okay, next up. Startup episode. So I was listening. I've talked about, I think, every episode now of the last season of Startup. And I was listening to the final episode in the season, which is called Exit. And I felt, as I was, so in this episode, Alex is sort of saying, goodbye to everybody. It's the final episode, and the final season of Startup. He says, listen, this, because Startup started with the first season where he was building the company, and then it progressed and they did different seasons on different topics. And this is the final season. He says, this is it forever. The final episode of the final season. It's over. Now that they've been acquired by Spotify. And as I was listening to it, I found myself feeling like emotional and like just really happy for Alex and also his partner, but more so for Alex because he's the person that I hear and have a little bit more of a connection. And it's just incredible the connection that you can have with a podcast host. There's this incredibly intimate connection that you feel, which is not, I don't know if it's mimicked by any other medium. I've experienced this myself to a very small degree with Mage Talk and stuff where people are like, listen to it. And then I meet them in person. They're like, oh, it's crazy. It's really cool. But it's just incredible because I found myself feeling just so genuinely happy for him, thinking back to because I remember when I first listened to that first season, and you had no idea if he was going to make it or not. You heard his first pitch to a VC, which was horrible. And actually, it's funny. I was thinking about that pitch, and then at the tail end of the final episode, they played that clip of audio, which was perfect. And so you didn't know if it was going to work, and he didn't know if it was going to work. You were seeing it happen, as it happened. And so then we saw it succeed. We saw the company grow, and then we saw the acquisition. And Alex in the final episode was just, saying thank you and whatnot. And it just kind of was. It was just incredible how I was feeling so emotional about it and thinking about the dynamics of, the connection you have to a podcast and whatnot. So that was cool. And Alex Bloomberg is the man. All right. Next up, Tinyseed Tales. So Another person I'm a gigantic fan of and that I've listened to on podcast actually for a long time is Rob Walling. Um, Startups for the Rest of Us podcast, founder of Drip, now more recently founder of Tinyseed, which is an investment fund for bootstrap businesses. And I've never met Rob. I haven't gone to Micro. Oh, also the creator of MicroConf, which is a conference for bootstrap founders. I haven't gone to MicroConf because I'd never gone because I always go to Magento Imagine, which is like 1 week beforehand, and it's just a weird conflict. Anyways, but it's like I feel this intimate connection because I've listened to Startups for the Rest of Us for so long. I haven't listened recently, but I listened to that podcast for several years as I was building my first business. And anyways, it's just incredible, like everything that Rob has done with Drip being wildly successful and being acquired, and more recently he's launching season 1 of a podcast next Thursday. It follows a startup founder over several months. I've been podcasting for nearly 10 years and 700 episodes. This is by far the most time, effort, and money I've invested into a podcast, which is saying a lot. And I listened real quickly to this clip, and Tinyseed in of itself is really interesting. They're funding bootstrap founders, giving them access to tools and a team of mentors and some funding. I think it's going to be massively successful. It's already, I'm sure, very successful. And then I see that he's going to be doing a podcast following a founder. I'm like going, oh my God, this is going to be so good. I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to listen to it. And it's like, man, everything Rob touches turns to gold. It's so cool to see. And like I remember one time I was on a plane, and it was in that phase where I was building my first business and trying to figure things out, struggling. And I read his book, Start Small, Stay Small, where he talked about how it's okay to be a small business. You don't have to, and this is a thread that you see in everything Rob does, is you don't have to go that route of let's be VC funded, let's be a unicorn, let's be gigantic. You can have a great profitable business that's smaller. You can design it the way you want around your lifestyle. And he's done that with, MicroConf is micro. It's all about those smaller businesses. Tinyseed, it's about, that theme of, and it's funny because on the one hand, Rob is definitely staying small in all of these different ways. And at the same time, he's had massive successes with these businesses and is now, an investor, right? Like, and it's great. It's just like, it's really cool to see, really unique what Rob has done. And I'm sure I'm going to meet him one of these days and get to tell him how awesome I think he is. But I'm looking forward to this podcast for show. All right, next up, short and medium form. Let me wait for this page to load up here. 18 minutes in here in the program. Okay, so I've been thinking about long form text, and I just Googled long form text and pulled up the first result, which is WordStream. So I'm not sort of necessarily responding directly to this article, but I like to have a visual on screen for every topic I'm talking about. But what I've been thinking about was, and the article is what is long form content and why does it work? And I'm not too directly in the like content like SEO space in terms of like long form content, but based on what I remember, I'm not sure if this is still completely accurate, but like if you want to have content rank well on Google, you want it to be long, like you want it to be a gigantic piece of content. Of course, you want it to be high quality as well. But like, it's funny because I've been consuming a lot of content, a lot of stuff on Twitter, and tweets are small, right? Tweet threads can be longer, but you can really consume and learn an incredible amount of information in short form, right? And in some ways, there's something much more elegant about short form content, saying things concisely, right? Like some of Naval Ravikant's tweets are just mind benders. One I remember recently was universities are the new taxi medallions. Small tweet, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you know. And so it's funny. I'm in this weird mode where I'm consuming more content than ever. I'm learning more content. I'm learning more than ever. And at the same time, every time I see a long article, I don't have the patience to read long form right now, which is maybe is a flaw, probably is a flaw, could be a flaw. But at the same time, it's kind of like I think that there's to a large extent there's long form for the sake of long form because it works for SEO. I think that it's been incentivized by Google. And I think part of that reason has got to be, as fancy as their machine learning algorithms are, it's got to be easy to look at length. I mean, if something is long, you know that effort. If something is long and you run some algorithms to make sure there's not a whole bunch of duplicate nonsense in there, that's an easy way to know that a certain amount of effort has gone in, an easy way to set a bar for quality without actually looking at quality directly. So I think that might be part of why long form has been incentivized. But yeah, it's interesting. I just find myself when I see a tweet and I see a link to an article, and I go click the article and it's this long, I kind of like go, can you tell me the point of this in this much like this? Like, can you tell me the point of, you know? So I kind of think that short medium form at some point is going to make a comeback. When Google eventually gets smart enough to understand that the quality of this piece of content is greater than the quality of this super long piece of content because the actual information is there and it's expressed more elegantly and it gets the point across, then I think hopefully everybody will move to that because people respond to incentives, and so then I think people will move towards that, and we will see a renaissance of short and medium form content. And of course, there's already been a renaissance of short form content in the sense if you look at Twitter, and that works on Twitter, but then like in the world of articles, right? And you could argue LinkedIn is driving medium form content because LinkedIn posts have to be 1,300 characters, which is good, which limits you to a certain amount. That's sort of like medium form. And so you could argue that they're already having a bit of a renaissance in those mediums. I hate saying mediums. Let me just say mediums. Whereas if you're in the world of an article, a blog post, anything that you would come to from Google, then it's just always got to be long form for the sake of long form, which drives me bonkers. Drives me bonkers, man. Okay, next up. Topic of jealousy. This is something I've been thinking about lately, and I'm just going to be vulnerable for a moment here. My buddy Mike tweeted out, quickest way to kill joy is to compare yourself with others and covet their life. A tragedy is to model this behavior for your children. And I replied, so true. I've been thinking a lot lately about that. I have a lot more jealousy in me than I'm comfortable admitting. Such a waste of energy. And yeah, it's just I've been thinking about this in a lot of different ways. I think that it's hard. I don't know. It's hard to express a little bit. I just find that as I've been trying to be in more of a learning mode and a content consumption mode on Twitter, podcasts, and whatnot, like I find that there's certain, there's a saying like you want your friends to do well, but not better than you, or what is that saying? Let me see if I can find that. Friends do well, but not better, or something like that. It's what is this? Some people want you to do well. Oh, here we go. Some people want you to do well, but not better than them. Yeah, that's the phrase. And it's like, it's like you want your friends and people to do well, but then when you see them doing better than you and you're like, oh man, I don't want them to do better than me, then you can feel jealous. And I'm just coming up against that in myself a lot. And I'm like, oh man, that's not good, dude. That's that's BS. Like, that's not healthy at all. And trying to get rid of that. So I don't know if that's necessarily an easy thing to get rid of in yourself. And I'm trying to do my best to do that, because at the end of the day, it's counterproductive. It doesn't help you. It wastes your energy. It limits you from learning. Like, if there's somebody who you don't want to learn from because you perceive them as being, they're not smarter than me. They're not more successful than me. Why do I need to listen to them? And then you could have something to learn from them, like you could, if you block yourself off from learning from people, you're limiting yourself. You're ultimately weakening yourself. So yeah, that's just something I'm working on. I don't know. It's more, I guess this feels like more of a confession than like an actionable tip for you. But anyways, it is what it is. All right, last up, cool Commerce Hero job that just landed. This is a B2B marketplace. It is a B2B marketplace in an interesting industry that is, just pulling this up here, a B2B marketplace play here on M2. So it's an interesting project. They're looking to hire somebody 75 to 150 an hour. So they have a good, healthy budget. 10 hours a week, kind of a thing. And this is directly for a merchant. And so it's a multi-vendor situation, again, marketplace. So yeah, I think this is a cool gig with somebody that has, the client is pretty deep in this industry, so they know what they're doing. Know what they're doing, have a healthy budget. It's an interesting thing. I think this could be a really cool project. I think the initial thing is sort of like a pilot project type of a thing, and then to see how things work out. And then I'm sure there'd be a much larger phase of work after the fact. So and as I'm looking at these tags, one of the tags on here is full service e-commerce agency. So now I should have looked at this a little closer. 9 times out of 10, when people come to Commerce Hero, they're looking for an individual freelancer or full-time. Sometimes they're looking for an agency, which I'm now realizing this client might be looking for an agency. I should probably confirm that. And with the budget they have, it wouldn't be unusual for them to be looking for an agency. So I should confirm that. But if you're interested in this, definitely click on the job link and request a match, or ping me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. You can check that out. All right, that's all I got for today. 28 minutes. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome Saturday, awesome weekend. I'll see you tomorrow.